Right, well, good evening. My name's Simon Lovesey, and amazingly, this is Restart Sailing show number 13, joined by John Emmett, who's been here, well, since the beginning, haven't you, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think it's show 30, and I'm very pleased to say that I think pretty much everything is looking so much better than we first started, and it's actually turned into a really good opportunity just to chat to classes and to let people know more about the wonderful world of sailing, as well as
Yes,
how we can sail in a safe way.
so we got that coming up in a minute. But yes, back to our usual three stages. I think amazingly over the last, well, it's a year and a bit now, how reliable these have been, isn't it? Or consistent.
Well, absolutely, and this year we will have national and international championships, so we're firmly in the third phase.
Yes, although I think still
Sorry,
a
third
bit
stage.
third stage, yeah. But I think still a bit sort of unsure completely. Not everything going ahead, as we'll talk about in a minute. Right. So, but yeah, it's been really back to grassroots sailing. I think that's been the biggest thing. We've seen a massive boom, in club sort of membership and massive really numbers at club level apparently. Which we've never seen for well decades, have we?
Well, in terms of time on the water, it just makes a lot of sense to be sailing local because you get more hours on the water for time in the car, and that was something we talked to Tim Hulse, the ILCA class training officer, about this idea of training and sailing locally. I think that's actually a good thing, full stop.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you mentioned one of your chats, the regular output that we've been putting in.
Yeah, well, both the chats and the shows are put up on YouTube, and obviously with that we can have a slightly higher resolution format, and it is easier to watch the whole series than the way Facebook works. So for those people who haven't looked at it that way or want to, it's very easy. Just type John Emmett Sailing into YouTube, and you can click subscribe in the bottom right. And just like the Facebook, you'll be able to get a live notification when the shows go up. So you've got your Restart Sailing chats, and I think probably the next one will be either with the Topper class or the International Moth class. That's two very different classes. And then we will be having another show next week with the 470. So it's all there, and it's quite a nice way to watch. And hopefully, we're going to continue to get really good figures, and people will be interested in the other classes and the other talks.
Yeah, no, it's a lot can be learned by looking at other classes and clubs, can't they? So, right.
Absolutely. So one of the things we talked very much about the number of daily infections in the UK, because that's why we are now very, very thankfully in step three, because the number of infections is low. That's obviously the number which is recorded. That's the number which is tested. And you do have to say that not everybody gets tested. So what I wanted to look a bit at today was actual estimated infections. And you can see, even when you're looking at that, you can see in the UK the numbers are very low and they're continuing to decline. So for those people looking at having events in August, I think that looks very, very promising.
Yeah,
And for the UK, one of the big things that has enabled us to get to this stage is, of course, the vaccination programme. The big question on everybody's minds now, of course, is about the Olympics in Japan. So I thought it's important to put up the predictions so people can see where we are and where we're headed. And it's important to look at data because, if you look at raw data, you're going to get a much truer picture than that tabloid headlines. They are there to sell newspapers and sell clicks after all. And the thing with Japan is it's actually had quite a small amount of testing. So the actual numbers of infections are much larger than those reported, but at the same time they've been going down. And it's not surprising they're relatively high because we've just come off what's called the Japan Golden Week, which is a fantastic social time in Japan, but that's obviously not ideal during a pandemic. The reason Japan, for such large population, high density as well, population in the cities, is because they've been very good at wearing the masks, and I think that's something you will see to continue in the Olympic Games. But there are a lot of negative stories out there at the moment. I understand that unfortunately negative press does sell newspapers, but also the political element, and even businessmen and politicians, people are always going to say what they think the population would like to hear, because that's how you get votes or get people to buy your product. But if you look where we are, I think in June things are going to be looking a lot better in Japan. So I'm sure that's something on everybody's minds. And we're just very lucky in the UK that we're already ahead of the curve, as it were. And that's why we're able to restart sailing.
Yeah. And yeah, so we're seeing still lots of activity on the Restart Sailing group. I think as every change happens, it's good to see people sharing, ideas and experiences. I guess there's no right answer to any of this, is there, John?
No, but there are good ways of doing things, and roll on the 21st of June. That's what I say. I mean, we shouldn't be complacent. I think the government's been very good at saying, look, this is not set in stone, but the way things are going looks very positive. And as a sport, we're in a fantastic setting because we're outdoors, well ventilated, in the sunshine. I can say that in the UK and May, even if the Gulf Stream is currently to the south of us rather than to the north of us. We're in a fantastic sport for that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And we're the only thing which people have missed out is maybe socialising inside in a clubhouse. But I think it's made people realise the key experiences is what you have out on the water.
Yeah, and I think it's been encouraging that the government's taking more notice of the data from Pacific sort of activities and sports. And as you say, sailing's fared very well, and I think that is now been noticed, isn't it? And if we
Yeah, I mean it's an overused word, Simon, but it's an unprecedented time, and actually it's good to see people thinking ahead. And if you have another jab in the winter to keep everything going, that sounds absolutely fine to me. I think it's just good that there's a lot of evidence out there that shows sailing, when done in a safe way, it's incredibly low risk. And we've seen so many regattas that have been conducted in a safe way. I think the learning and the evidence is now there. And hopefully people at a local level now feel really safe to come back and start taking the covers off the boats if they haven't already done so.
Yeah, and I think it's good that we're in that shape, because I think we're going to be living this really forevermore, aren't we, in some form?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of countries during their cough, cold, and flu season, they wear masks and socially distance anyway. I mean, if you see somebody having a coughing fit, I think it's human nature to step away from a bit. It's just the last couple of years, it's been a little bit more serious. But yeah, I think as it goes on with the vaccination passports or whatever, it's going to make it much clearer how we can do things in a safe way.
So,
And for sailing,
yeah.
the things which have come out of it, like the online meetings and online debriefings for coaches and extensive use of video, etc. I see these as all really, really positive things.
Yeah, we move forward, haven't we? So a reminder, we've actually followed this to the letter, haven't we? The 8th of March, some easing. 29th of March was a key one, wasn't it, in terms of organised activity?
Yeah, despite dire warnings, I think we're on track for the 21st of June as well.
Yeah. And then sort of the 12th of April, 17th of May, which is obviously the big one we just had, in terms of overnight accommodation. I think that's quite a significant one for sailing events.
Yeah, that means you've got your 2-day open meetings can now run.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have got used to doing, 1 day, pack up, go sailing.
Well, yes.
Back up, go home.
Yes.
So.
And I think there might be some trends coming out of that. The less constraining days out. And we'll probably see more of those, I guess, won't we? And so 21st of June. Well, fingers crossed. I mean, a few wobbles at the moment, isn't there? But hopefully we can see that through.
Yeah, well, I think the key thing is the vaccination programme, etc., has been stepped up, and I don't think there's a lot more we can do on a local level. Most of the clubs I know have worked really, really hard, and I think you've got to take your hat off to those volunteers who signed up to be on the committees. But there's certainly no harm in regularly washing your hands and good hygiene and stuff anyway. So there we go.
Yeah. Okay. And And I think it's been good that the government actually have laid out the framework, which was a bit missing last year, wasn't it? It was a bit sort of
Well, I think
vague.
last year we were playing catch up,
Yeah.
and now we've got a cunning plan in place.
Yes, and I think hopefully this does set the stall for any future issues, doesn't it? We've got the framework to work with. And then the REA have been doing a sterling job of sort of really turning that into sailing speak, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things, just to put things in a readable form. So all those documents, all the useful documents, are on the Restart Sailing group. It's important you go to the group because we can host documents on the group, not on the page. So if you need to find everything, it's all there under files. And if there's any updates, I'm always going to try and put them up as soon as practical.
Yeah. And good to see lots of events coming up. Picture of our friends at the Mustos. They sold their nationals out, I think, in a few hours. So good to see.
Yeah, I guess it was possibly a record for clicks, and they did the same with the Orca class. They said that the nationals entry is going to start at midday, and that filled up super quick. So it's difficult. I guess everybody's trying to make sure their lunchtime was at midday so they could get on it.
But probably worth mentioning a few events aren't going ahead. There are some cancellations, and I saw actually on Facebook the enterprises might not be going ahead. Possibly more of an issue of accommodation, actually. That although I think there's the interest in the event, the feeling was not everyone could get the accommodation on the seaside. So as everyone rushes to a UK staycation.
That's very unfortunate. I mean, that's why people do need to start planning ahead now, which is probably something we've got out of the habit of doing. I know some international events which were World Championships have not been called World Championships because, for example, the Kiwis and the Australians and so on couldn't actually travel to them. And that's something else to bear in mind. But on the domestic front, I think, when you're in your car travelling with the people you live with or you always sail with, I think that's a safe environment. The thing I always think is just good to support your home club because that's where the future of sailors come from. The young sailors, the people who are now in their optimists are the future of our sport in 20 years' time.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing so many people coming back to the sport or restarting, and I think the challenge now will be to turn them into lifelong sailors, actually nurture that interest, and retention, and good to have a play on the boats or supping or something like that, and hopefully as a sport we can turn them back into a boom time. It's almost back to where we were back in the 60s and 70s, where everyone was sailing, wasn't it?
I hope so. I hope so. So we've got the Europe class with us for this show. Class very close to my heart.
Yeah. So we got John. I think John's still there. John Tweedle.
Hello there.
Yeah.
And we have Ben.
Good evening.
Have we got your visuals, John?
Sorry, say again?
We've lost visuals on you, John Tweedle.
Oh, I don't know why that is.
All right. Okay. Oh. Oh, bloody hell, someone's ringing me now.
This is purely done on purpose to prove that this is recorded
right,
absolutely live.
Okay. Well, I think everyone knows what John Tweedle looks like. So
can you just tell us, if we start with John, just in case we lose it, can you just tell us a little bit what happened for the Euro class in 2020, and then we'll go on to where we are now.
Yeah, 2020 was a complete washout for us pretty well. We realised very early on that the programme was going to be decimated and it wasn't going to be a short-run thing. We tried to be responsible in everything we did and obviously be very proactive in making early decisions on whether events would be able to go ahead or not. I believe we did have an open meeting at Overy Stave.
Yeah, well, actually, that was the first
during the summer.
I think that was the first first ever, wasn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to that one. The Overy Stave event went ahead, and unfortunately, our inlands, obviously the nationals was cancelled in the height of summer. The inlands that we did have planned, again, that was binned off. And it was impossible to get upset about that because we were very much relying on the goodwill of members of clubs who put their time in to welcome other classes to their venues. And quite often, it's a big sweeping broad brush statement, but those people that volunteer at clubs do tend to be of the older age range. and it's totally understandable that they didn't want to put themselves at risk. So there's no ill will there at all. We did manage to get a 1-day inland event. I think it was towards the end of September, possibly even early October, at Havisham, which was arranged at very short notice. And Havisham Sailing Club were absolutely superb in helping us out with that. And I can't even remember how many boats we had. It was, I think it was knocking on the door of the 20s, which we weren't expecting, all things considered. But it was lovely for everyone to just see each other again for the first time all year.
It just shows that the appetite was definitely there.
Oh, absolutely. We were all itching to, but obviously everything has to be done in a very responsible way and with due deference to everyone's personal situations. That's continued in our planning for this year. We've already lost our first event was going to be at Posh, which was vastly unfortunate, but I believe that's being reinstated for September.
Yeah, that's back in September. I think it was feeling a bit early. It was, I think, before the 17th of May, wasn't it? That was the issue there, and
yes,
accommodation as well.
Just tell us a little bit about Posh for those people who haven't heard of it.
Oh, Posh, the paint and open for single-handers, absolutely brilliant event. It's down at Paynton, obviously, and was a 2 and expanded to 3-day event with a little add-on event on the Friday. I've only done it a couple of times now, and it's just great. Beautiful setting, great little racing, but it's multi-class, all single-handed classes pitching up, and handicap racing going on. Last time I think I beat Ben, actually. I think that was probably the last time I beat Ben, to be fair. But we were having great battles in the varying conditions. As the wind went up and down, at one point we were having good battles with the OKs, and then the conditions would change slightly, and they'd get into their purple zone, and off they'd go. But
their purple zone. I've been coaching for 20 years. I've never heard of the purple zone.
You've never heard of? Maybe that's a military term. I don't know. But they were going. They'd hit their little purple patch of performance in exactly the right conditions for them, and then would just disappear off and sail above their handicap. And we'd have our moments depending on the conditions as well. But yes, Posh was great. We lost an open meeting as well this year at Cotswold, which was going to be our first single class open, which was a shame. So it means that our first event of this year is going to be the Nationals next month at Weymouth.
Right.
Well, I'm very biased, so I'll keep quiet. But perhaps Ben could tell us a little bit about that. I understand you're knocking on the 50 club. Is that fair to say?
Yep. So we were last at Weymouth in 2019 for the Nationals, and we had 31 boats there, which was pretty impressive given that we were on 18 the year before, I think, so a good increase. And
almost a double.
Yeah, so last year, obviously with not a lot of activity, we continued to grow the class through the Facebook community we've got, and lots of people getting interested in the class, lots of people returning to the class, lots of people with boats getting back in their boats who hadn't been out for a long time. So I think we've got back
there were some ex-Olympians. Actually, I shouldn't say ex-Olympians. Once an Olympian, always an Olympian.
Absolutely.
So, in 2019 we got Laura Baldwin back in her boat, 2004 representative for the Olympics, and so she returned to the event, and since then we continued to grow, and now I think we're at a point where we're hoping for 40 plus at this year's Nationals, possibly with 50.
Do you know what your numbers are as we're hearing live?
So entries are going open very soon, but there's a lot of people eager for entries to open, so hopefully there'll be lots of entries in soon. And
what's been great to see following on Facebook is all that activity, but how much boat bimbling's been going on, and I guess the COVID situation's perhaps helped that, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think the great thing about the Facebook group is it's just somewhere where people can ask questions and there'll always be an answer.
Literally within seconds. I think the big indicator for us as to how much the class has reinvented itself in the UK is the fact that we're on, I believe, in the last 6 months, certainly within the last year, we're looking at 5 brand new boats coming into the UK, plus brand new boats being built in the UK. We know of 2 that are currently being built.
Right. Okay.
And that's something that a situation the class has never been in before.
Yeah. And it's Steve Cockrell's importing them, is he?
Well, Steve's working with Winner to bring winners in.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think there's been 4 boats coming from Winner, with a 5th also just been ordered. But Synergy Boats have designed and have built, or in the process of building, boat number 1. So it's going to be really interesting. Unfortunately, it's not going to be ready for the Nationals because they really want to take their time and make sure they get it right first time. So rather than putting a deadline that could sort of cramp their style somewhat, they're going to make sure it's right. We'll definitely have it on show for the inlands and for later in the year. We're looking forward to seeing that one. We also know that Alex Scholes is I believe building a boat. Hopefully, should be at the Nationals as well, from a set of the Borison molds that the class has.
Okay. So do you just want to repeat the date of the Nationals? You probably said it earlier, but for people who are interested.
Yeah, we've got a day. It's not a training day because we didn't want to go formal. We're on the Thursday, the 16th of June. We've got a practice day, so that will be a day where everyone can get down there a little bit early, get on the water. We've got a number of members who are coming down. This will be their first event on salty water, so it'll be good for them in a low pressure situation to get out and spend some time on the water that we're going to be racing on. And then Friday the 17th through till Sunday the 20th is the actual Nationals. We're actually sharing the event with the Streakers. Part of our big strategy that we came up in as a class, we came up with in 2018, 2019 was that we wanted to make sure we had the best events and the best venues that we could, and that's involved sharing events and venues with other classes. We've worked with the Finns, we've worked with the Solos. In fact, our last Nationals was an event shared with the Solos at Weymouth, and that's something I think that we're going to be looking to do far more of, because it's to everyone's benefit, keeps costs down and allows us, especially with relatively small classes, we're not talking about 100 boats plus, but it makes it financially viable for smaller classes to go
so
out.
You keep your costs down.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the quality of service and facilities up.
Yeah, and it takes the risk out from the club, doesn't it, in terms of
absolutely
the
right.
better numbers and things, better social aspects. Yeah, no, I think so.
Well, hopefully 2022. The social will be back on track.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, we're having to cramp down the social side this year because obviously we're restricted outside of official events. We're restricted to 30. So, for example, in previous years down at Weymouth, we had everyone round to mine for a big barbecue. With our increased entry numbers and the restriction of 30 people, we're not going to be able to do that this year. But yeah, 2022 hopefully will be a big monster party around at my place.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. And
any final?
I was just going to say, if anyone wants to get in the class, is there a demo boat or any way of getting on the water?
We don't currently have a demo boat, but we're all such lovely, cuddly people that if anyone wants to get in touch, we'll find a way for them to get a trial in a boat. I just managed to buy myself a second one that I'm working on. As soon as I get home from Yorkshire, I'll be working away to get that ready for the Nationals. So I've got a second boat. I've already been approached by some of the Oxford Pirates, the youngsters that I coached up in Oxford, to go, oh, yeah, I've heard about this. I've heard about how everything's growing in Europe. Any chance I can come down and have a go? Absolutely. Well, especially, I suppose once I've coached them, I've got to take responsibility for their sailing quality, haven't I? So should be more than happy to lend them a boat.
Okay, so they approach you by the website. Is that the best way, John? Or?
I think the first port of call is probably best to be the Facebook group. I think it's the easiest way to contact the class, and then the website's got lots of information on too.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Look at that, good.
So any final thoughts from you, Ben? I think you've just sold another 5 Europes and another 10 entries. No problem there.
Yeah, I think it's been great having the growth in the class, and I think having a active online community, especially at the moment, is such a big selling point. And it really is I can think of probably 5 posts on the Facebook group today we're all people asking questions or just posting something they're up to or something, and there's always people getting back to them with tips or answering their questions. So
yeah, it's been really impressive how the class has used online and social media to keep that engagement, and I think your numbers just
I think the big thing is I mean, our big key word is inclusivity, and I know that's a word that gets bounded around an awful lot, but you can't sell a dog of a boat to lots and lots of people. It's got to be a good thing in the first place. And everyone who's sailed to Europe, same as everyone who sailed a Finn, will know it's an absolutely fantastic boat. Now, we checked all the stats from the 2019 nationals that we did. We had 31, 32 boats. But the stats that were more important than how many boats you had on the start line was the fact that 40% of the entrants were female. And we're all racing on a level playing field because we've gone and got the right masts for our size and weight. We've got the sail that matches it. So 40% were female, 50% were under the age of 40. We had age ranging from 15 through to 70 something. And we have a weight range of between 50 kilos and myself at the top end, I think it was, at about 82. So, I mean, that's a huge range of demographic that this boat can appeal to. And it is really tight racing. If you go onto the Facebook page, you'll see videos of myself at 80-something kilo. Oh, I think at the time I was 78 kilos. My brother was at 83 kilos. And Emma was 52 kilos or something like that. And we were out training at Weymouth, and there was no appreciable difference in boat speed. So this is proper level playing field racing, regardless of gender, size or age. Yeah. And that's something that's easy to sell to people.
Very good.
Right. Well, thanks very much. Yeah. Look forward to seeing the report from the Nationals then in June.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Okay. So, we're back into the Selden Soldiers Winter Series. Having had one event now carrying on. So we have the Grafham Bell, which will be the Grafham Grand Prix next weekend, and ending with the Tiger Trophy at the often see some Europes out, don't we? I think Emma Pearson and co. So we get to see a few more, but that's coming up in a week's time, and hopefully a few more events during the summer. Right. So moving on to John, I think.
I'm waiting for my slide. You're very welcome, either Ben or John, to chip in or ask a question. You're not on screen, but we know you're still there, hiding in the background. Yeah. And it's been a really good show. The number of live views is very encouraging. So you've obviously ticked lots of boxes. A lot of coaches will sit here and they will tell you that starting is 70% of the race. My response to that is that 53% of statistics are just made up on the spot. But it is really an important part of the race, and certainly it makes it much easier to get a good result. So just a very basic start line here, which is assuming that there's no persistent shift, there's no differences in pressure across the course, there's no tide. One end of the start line is more upwind than the other, and that happens because race officers are not perfect, or in fact they might actually decide to put a tiny bit of pin in just to make sure that their lovely newly varnished yacht doesn't get hit off the start line. But the point being, it's very rare to have a completely square line, and therefore there will be a favoured end. And just like going to the cinema, that's something else we used to do in 2018. If you arrive early, you get a better car parking space. So in this particular diagram, the best place to be is by the committee boat, because that end is more upwind. And now modern techniques, we actually see people crabbing. So they actually almost move to windward along the line. That's quite an advanced technique. I actually saw it with the 470s in Villamora, and I certainly see it in some of the single-handed classes. But the very basic one here is the double tag, and that's just the skill to do two tags without crossing the line, because a lot of championships these days tend to be sailed with a U flag. In other words, if you're over within 60 seconds of start time, you're actually disqualified from that race unless the start is recalled. So that's a really important skill, not going over the line. I think that's something which World Sailing brought in. It was a very good thing because with P flag, often if 2 or 3 boats go over the line, they can easily drag the rest of the fleet with them. So yeah, something you can practice on your own. Double tack, sit near a buoy as you drift away from it. When you have enough space, just do 2 tacks and get back to that position, and you close that gap between you and the boat to windward, because if you look at the bottom diagram, if you give a boat that much of a head start on a biased line, they may well roll over the top of you. So that's this shows little technical tip, the double tack.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned the 470s in there.
I did. I've seen a lot of 470s recently. They've had their, I mean, Villamore now, and they've had both the Worlds and the Europeans in close succession. This is just such a lovely picture. And it's going to be great to speak to Team Ryvita. That's an amazing name. To speak to Team Ryvita next week. So it'll be 7 o'clock for the Facebook, and internet permitting, we will have the YouTube up at 9 o'clock. So yeah, really looking forward to talking to those two, and we'll see how it goes. We may well have them on separate Skypes as well. Now we've done the practice.
Right. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay.